So, have you ever stopped to think if good design actually means the same thing everywhere in the world? Today, we're diving into that fascinating and, let's be honest, sometimes brain-breaking reality of UX design across different cultures. We're going to look at how the so-called rules of design seem to bend and even snap the second you cross a border.
Okay, let's just start with this because it absolutely hits the nail on the head. This quote perfectly captures the culture shock so many designers feel. You know, all those universal principles we're taught in school? Yeah, turns out they're not so universal. It's that stomach drop realization that what works beautifully in one country can fall completely flat on its face in another.
So the whole idea comes from a designer who is literally living this dual reality. They split their time between the US and India, and get this, they carry two phones, one for each country. And the apps on those phones? It's like they're from different planets. They operate on completely different assumptions about what good design even is. It's a daily, real-world lesson that context is absolutely everything.
First up, let's talk about trust. It's the foundation of any digital product, right? If users don't trust you, you're toast. But how you build that trust? Well, that's where things get really interesting. As we're about to see, sometimes the answer is to show all your work, and other times, it's to hide it completely.
In the US and much of the Western world, the dominant philosophy is this thing called progressive disclosure. The whole idea is to create an experience that's clean, simple, almost invisible. You hide all the messy, complex stuff, remove every possible point of friction, and just let the user glide effortlessly to their goal.
And this example with Uber just lays it all out perfectly. In the US, you pop in an Uber, maybe confirm the driver's name, and that's it. Trust is invisible. Verification happens magically behind the scenes. But in India, it's a whole different ballgame. You get in the car, and before you go anywhere, you have to verbally give the driver a 4-digit PIN. It's a moment of deliberate friction. Some people call it visible security theater. So what gives?
Well, this number right here explains a lot. A study found that a whopping 78% of Indian users actually felt more secure because of that visible PIN. In a market where digital trust is still being built, that seamless, invisible process can feel, well, a little sketchy. Users don't want security to be a black box. They want to see the lock, they want to turn the key themselves. They want to know it's working. So the big takeaway here is a total paradigm shift for a lot of designers. We're trained from day one to hunt down and destroy friction at all costs. But what this shows us is that in some contexts, that friction, that visible moment of security, isn't a bug. It's the most important feature you have.
Okay, so let's keep that idea in mind as we move on to our next theme, identity. And here, we're talking about something way deeper than just a user preference. This is about designing for a core part of who your users actually are.
Now check this out. This is a brilliant contrast between a filter and a mode. On Uber Eats in the US, being vegetarian is treated like any other dietary preference. It's a little checkbox you have to go digging for in a settings menu. But then you look at Zomato, a massive food app in India. They have a big, obvious toggle switch on the home screen for pure veg mode. You flip it, and bam, the entire app transforms. The color scheme turns green, and all non-vegetarian options just vanish. It's a completely different experience. And why would they go to all that trouble to build a whole separate universe inside their app? Well, this is why. Around 40% of India's population is vegetarian. That's not a niche group. We're talking about more than 500 million people. And for many, it's not just a diet. It's a fundamental part of their cultural and religious identity.
This brings us to this powerful concept called identity-based design. It's about recognizing when a user need is so widespread and so deeply felt that it's no longer just a preference. It deserves more than a filter. It deserves an entire experience built to serve and affirm that part of their identity.
And this gives us a fantastic rule of thumb. When you're designing, think about the scale and the intensity of the need. You know, if 5% of your users need something, sure, that's probably a filter. But when 40% of your users have a need that's tied directly to who they are, yeah, that might just deserve its own mode.
All right, let's dive into our third big theme, the experience itself. Are we designing for a calm, quiet, efficient journey? Or are we building something that's all about high-octane engagement and a sense of urgency?
This quote just perfectly captures the feeling of using quick commerce apps in India. They promise delivery in 10 minutes, and the app's interface is literally a giant countdown clock, ticking down in your face. It creates this incredible, almost anxious sense of urgency. It is the absolute polar opposite of a calm user experience.
This contrast in payment apps really drives the point home. In the US, the holy grail is efficiency. Think Apple Pay.
It's so frictionless, it's almost invisible. The whole philosophy is the best interface is no interface. But in India, Google Pay took a totally different route. They gamified payments. You scan a QR code to pay, and then you get a little digital scratch card for a chance to win a few cents back. It actually adds friction, but it's fun friction.
And there's some powerful psychology for why this works so well. It's called a variable reward schedule. It's the exact same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. Because you might win, you're compelled to do it again and again. Google Pay used this simple trick to get millions of people to adopt digital payments for the very first time. It was brilliant.
So the crucial point here is that there isn't one right answer. Sometimes the goal really is to be invisible and efficient, but other times the goal is to add a bit of what you might call delightful friction to create a habit and drive engagement. You just have to know which problem you're actually trying to solve.
So, after looking at trust, identity, and experience, what does this all mean? Let's try to pull all this together into a new, more global way of thinking about what good UX really is.
It becomes really clear that a design philosophy isn't universal. It's shaped by these 5 key things. First, market maturity. Are your users new to this or are they pros? Second, your business model. Are you chasing high margins or high volume? Third, cultural context. What are the local norms? Fourth, trust models. Is trust assumed or does it have to be earned and shown, like with that Uber pin? And finally, information processing habits. Do your users prefer simplicity or do they want all the info at once? You have to answer these before you can build something that truly works.
And this is probably the most important lesson of all. We can't just blindly follow a checklist of best practices. Because guess what? Those practices were almost certainly born from a very specific context. Instead of looking for answers, we have to get much better at asking the right questions.
Ultimately, this is the framework we should all be using. Before we ever label a design as good or bad, we have to ask these 3 simple but powerful questions. Good UX for whom? In what context? And solving what problem? Because depending on the answers, the definition of good can change completely.